The following sports program is an encore presentation.
This show is live. Despite our best efforts, anything can happen. Some viewers may be offended. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Sports Talk Now. It's Gary Beech tonight, and we've got an entire segment on baseball. Yep, it's going to get down to about minus 18, minus 20 tonight, so let's try and warm things up a little bit by thinking spring, summer, warm baseball, eating hot dogs, and having a good time out there. I want to welcome to the program in studio Jean-Gilles Larocque from Sudbury Baseball Academy. A little bit later on, we'll be talking with a successful young man, local pitcher Dylan Rheault, who is drafted by the Baltimore Orioles back in 2013. We'll talk with Dylan via the phone. We'll also tap into Sportsnet's Gregg Zaun and Jamie Campbell a little bit later in the show as well. As always, you're welcome to take part in the show if you've got any questions. The numbers will be in the bottom of the screen, 705-586-3044 in Sudbury, or the toll-free numbers are 1-844-710-3808. You can also tweet us at EastlinkSTN. So we're going to talk minor league baseball. How do you get from minor league baseball to the pros? The path of Dylan Rheault, as you mentioned, a former resident who's now chasing his dream of playing in the majors, and also talking with the fellows from Sportsnet and get an idea of the Blue Jays, some of the moves they've made recently, if that's going to be a change for them. Is it going to be resulting in playoff action for the first time in '93 down in Toronto? But first off, Jean-Gilles Larocque, thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me.
You've got a very busy lifestyle. You're a teacher number one, and you just said, well, you know what, with twin boys, I probably don't have enough time in my life, so let's take on this baseball academy job too. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's something we started back in 2006. It was just basically, the idea was basically to help players from Northern Ontario receive, things that I had gotten. I find it's very selfish for someone who'd played baseball, got some exposure to some great coaches, and been able to travel a lot. To kind of hold that to yourself, I found was my responsibility to, especially for kids from Northern Ontario, to give them that opportunity or that avenue. So in 2006, we created the Baseball Academy. And it's funny, when we started, we had 6 players working out of the indoor soccer center from 6 in the morning till 7 in the morning, twice a week. And we had 6 kids and parents. Think about that. Minus 40, you have to wake up at 5:30, be there for 6. So kudos to the kids and parents to start off at 2006. And now we're 2014. And now we're running, little kids groups, so basically ages 5 to 8. We're running kids from 8 to 13 years old. Then we have our elite group. So we've grown, in that duration of time.
So number one, baseball's got to be one word, fun, right?
Has to be.
And if you have the tools to perhaps take it further, then this is maybe one route that you can take to hopefully get in contact, because it's really a contact game, isn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly. And the thing is, too, people, the parents, when you first start getting out for baseball is a pastime, especially in Sudbury. It's a pastime. It's something to do during the summer because we got hockey during the winter. It's just something to do during the summer. And then I think what we've helped show parents is that they're somewhere else. A lot of kids are playing hockey. That, we have the Sudbury Wolves, which is great. So they say, my kid can play for the Wolves, or you can play the NHL, so on and so forth. Baseball, what's that doing for me? And there's research out there, actually from Bob Elliott. There is more Canadians on baseball, on scholarships, playing baseball in the U.S. than there is hockey.
No kidding.
Yeah. So it's something people don't know. We're just flooding the market more and more and more with them, basically.
Well, you look at baseball. Of course, hockey has always been, as you said, what you think is the main idea of kids playing either scholarships or making it to the NHL. More and more basketball, too. You're seeing the NBA, the influx of Canadian players, and the effect that Steve Nash has had on, I think, Canadian basketball. By the way, next week we'll talk basketball, so make sure you tune in for that as well. Now, I'm looking at what you do. As I said, beside being a high school teacher locally, you've got an honor specialist, health phys ed, member of the National Strength Conditioning Assistant, First Aid, CPR, AED certified. I'm not sure what a lot of this stuff means, but it means that you've been very, very busy. You write an article for the Sudbury Star. You've got twin boys. Now, Caleb and Gabriel, how old are they?
They're turning 6 December 9th.
Okay, so they're easy. They can pretty well look after themselves. Do they drive yet? Or
they're at home by themselves right now. My wife's gone for something else.
Good. Now, your baseball career, give me a little bit of rundown, too. You said you did play some baseball locally in Garce, and then moved on to intercounty down south.
Yeah, so locally had played here, and rewind, fast forward a little bit. We talk about coaching right at the grassroots level, and it's funny, people say, well, my little league coach, he doesn't know this, or so on and so forth. I always come back to, if we wouldn't have people at the grassroots level who are just a dad or just someone in our community who wanted to give back to kids, if we wouldn't have people like that, we wouldn't have people like Dylan Rheault, we wouldn't have Roberta Alomars, we wouldn't have anybody, because who's giving those kids the time of the day at that young age? So kudos to those people. However, it's going to get to a point where those people got to, they're going to say, this is as far as I can get you, I got to pass you on to somebody else. So that, I was fortunate enough to have people in our local community, and fastball was big when I first started. I didn't play baseball till later on, because fastball, in Garson, fastball was the thing to do.
Yeah, they had some good teams.
Yeah. So that's how I started there. And then I got to baseball, and then from baseball I went to the intercounty, had tried out for the Stratford Hillers, made the team, and then the following year I played for the Brantford Red Sox. That summer, went and played in Texas my first year at junior college, and then came back, played for the Brantford Red Sox again. So yeah, that's kind of what the ball rolling was, basically the intercounty.
Lots of coaching involved as well. Now, did you have a chance to coach Dylan as well, or no?
Dylan, coaching. He came to our initial camp. We had our first baseball academy camp in the year 2000. I was playing the summer. I just came back from playing at Cal State Chico. I come back and said, hey, I'm gonna start a little business. So I went in for a loan, a $2,000 loan. I still remember, at the credit union in Garson, taking out some money, and I started something for the summer for kids. Lost my shirt on that summer, and thanks to Mr. McPhee, who was a great help at that time. Thank you, Mr. McPhee. But basically, is what it was. It was to give back to the kids, and Dylan had come to that camp. He was one of the first kids to come to that camp. And then, his dad says, still to this day, that that's kind of what got the bug kind of in Dylan's ear, because he was caught between basketball. He's 6'10", so he was caught between basketball and baseball, and I still remember Dylan, eating his popcorn against the fence, watching his dad play fastball, and then he came to these camps. I had a camp in the morning for the younger kids and the older kids, and he was with the younger kids in the morning camp, but we thought his skill level was high enough that we kept him for the afternoon with the older kids too, so there was something in him at an early age.
All right. Now, we're going to go to the phone line right now, and I believe Dylan is on the phone line. Dylan, are you there right now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks very much for joining us, and it's Gary Beech along with Zaun, who you are familiar with. Let's talk a little bit about where you're sitting right now. You're drafted by the Baltimore Orioles back in a couple of years back, and now you've had a very busy career running from the different spots that you've been. Now tell us a little bit about where you have been and where you're sitting right now.
Well, basically been all over. It all started in Garson, like JG said, at my dad's fastball games, and then I just started growing a love for baseball up there, and I would play with them, with coaches like Mike Brady, Gregg Johnson, and Kevin Grace, and then so I started the Sudbury Hitmen up there, and then like JG said, a lot of the kids on the team started focusing more on hockey and stuff, so I made the decision to move down to the Chicago area with my mom, and then I played a year and a half of high school baseball there. Got a look at college at Central Michigan, played there for 3 years, and then got drafted, and I've been with 3 different teams in the minor leagues with the Orioles.
So people say, well, if you're from Sudbury, if you're from Northern Ontario, not likely that you're going to be able to play baseball. But you're proving them wrong by doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah, well, even from when I was coming up to now, it's a lot different, with big credit to JG on that. But, if you have a passion for the game and it's something that you really want to do, there is a team out there for you. All you really need is one person to believe in you, and then you can work as hard as you want and achieve pretty much whatever you want.
What message would you pass along, Zaun, to players in Dylan's situation, where, that's a real positive for them to see that him as a role model, that, yeah, you can move on from here, and still a young man yet, and chances are he may see some, hoping to see some experience in the major leagues in one day.
He hit the nail on the head kind of himself, where you just have to give the players the opportunity. They'll capitalize on it. That's all they need. I don't care at any sport, whatever you're talking about. These kids just need an opportunity. That's it. Let them dictate if they're going to push the envelope or not, but it's not us to handcuff them and say, well, you can't or can't because look where you're from. Give them the opportunity. That's it.
Dylan, let's talk a little bit about your year. You started off Delmarva Shorebirds, South Atlantic League, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, now, I had an early start. I was looking at some of the info passed along to me. You had a 6-0 record in 11 appearances, a couple of saves, 1.57 ERA. How'd you finish off the season?
I hit a little rough patch there for a bit, but then I finished off the season pretty well. I'm not really sure what my final record was or my ERA, because I try not to look at stats. That just gets in the way of the process, but I had a good year. And then in the last 3 weeks, I think it was, I got promoted up a level to the Frederick Keys.
Now, you're, as Jean-Gilles mentioned, you're what, 6'9" or 6'10", 6'10"?
Yeah, I'm somewhere in there.
Still growing, or are you done that yet?
I think I'm done, but I mean, who knows at this point.
What is your favorite position? Do you prefer a reliever? Would you rather start? If you could have your druthers, what position do you prefer? I know you talked about it's really, you get a real rush from coming in a tense situation. Not everybody can thrive on that, but which one do you prefer if given the choice?
I mean, now, after experiencing a full year in the bullpen, I'd honestly have to say reliever. But at the end of the day, if a team wants me to be a starter, then I just want to pitch. It doesn't really matter to me, but it's two completely different things, I guess. I love the rush out of the bullpen, but as a starter, you kind of have full control over the game, I guess.
Where do you, when you're talking with Baltimore, have they given you an idea where they would like to see you over the next little while? You moved up at the end of the season, so do you know where things are going to be starting next year?
I'm hoping I'll be back in the same place that I finished, but at this point it's all hearsay. It just depends on what I do this offseason and how my spring training goes.
Dylan, I remember when you first went into Central Michigan, you went in there, 6'9", wherever you were at the time, 200 pounds. I remember he had gained 45 pounds in a few years, and that's kind of the phase we're in right now with some of our players is the off season. How important would you say, to the guys that, the off season is basically?
I'd say the off season is equally as important as the season, because that's when you put all your work in, and then once you're in season, it's just time to compete. I mean, when you're in the season, you don't really want to be working on things. It's just because if you're out there thinking about like mechanics or I need to gain weight or something, then you're not focusing on the task at hand, which is to compete, get guys out, get the base hits. And so for all the off season, you just need to train hard and really look at it as if it is a second season.
Dylan, how important was it for you to get a start in the Sudbury area with the baseball academy, with Jean-Gilles' academy there? Was that a point where you just basically said, you know what, this is something I really enjoy? I know Jean-Gilles was talking about either basketball, baseball, but was that a turning point for you? Yeah,
no, still to this day I remember that camp, because I remember I was with the younger kids and I hated it kind of because it just wasn't as competitive as wanted. And then once it went to the older kids camp, I was like just in love with everything. Like all the guys are real nice to me, and it's just, I don't know, it just inspired me to want to be better. But yeah, I do remember that camp still to this day.
What message would you pass along down? And we're being broadcast right across the Northeast right now in Sudbury, Timmins, folks from Elliott Lake, Temiskaming Shores, Kapuskasing, Sturgeon Falls. So you've got some young players who may be playing ball and saying, well, I don't really know, where I want to do. What would I want to do? What would you tell some young ball player, aspiring ball player that's thinking, geez, I'd like a career in the majors sometime?
I mean, it's just, baseball is a game that you have to just play. It's not something that you can just, I mean, there's some rare talents, but it's something that's repetition. So it is a little bit harder than North, but nowadays it's getting so much better that you just got to get out and play. I mean, depending on how old you are, if you're 12 years old, really the main thing is you just need to go out and play. And the more you can play, I mean, the better you'll get, and the more you'll fall in love with it, or the more you'll see that it's not something you want to do. Because at this point where I'm at, it really is basically my life, because when I'm in season, I'm at the field for like 10 hours a day, and I love every minute of it. So,
as far as other Canadians, are you running into more and more Canadians as your career continues on?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like when you play a team, I'll always go and like look at the roster and see if there's a Canadian on there. and they always do the same thing, and then we'll just kind of talk, where are you from, blah, 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 but it's nice. And the Canadian Baseball Network is a good website, too, to keep track of all the other Canadians.
Finally, as you're looking to, I know Jean-Gilles mentioned the conditioning aspect of it. When does your camp actually, when do you have to report to camp? Are we talking early spring is when you're back?
I'm pretty sure that the report date for us is going to be around February 28th, but I like to get down there at the beginning of February just to get in the warm weather and just to be fully ready to go for spring training.
And give me a quick run through your typical day right now, because you're in that workout mode, the off season. What does your typical day consist of?
Well, actually, right now I came back to Central Michigan to take 15 credits of class to get closer to my degree, just to have that as a backup plan. But normal day, I'll wake up, eat a big breakfast, go to class, and then I'll have a lift. The lift is probably about an hour and a half, and then I'll stretch after that again, and then I'll do about like 30 minutes of conditioning. And then once my throwing starts back up, which is in about 2 weeks, that'll probably take me another half an hour every day.
And that's your, plus shoveling snow. I guess that's got to be part of it as well. Do you have a lot of snow where you are right now, or no?
Actually, no, not right now. It melted. We did have some, but it kind of melted. I'm sure we'll be getting some soon.
Just thank goodness you're not in Buffalo, New York, that's all. Dylan Rheault,
seriously.
well, thank you so much for joining us by phone, and we're going to make sure we write that name down, put a little asterisk beside it, and keep it in mind for the next couple of years, and hopefully someday we'll see you out in a major league mound throwing for the Orioles or maybe the Jays. We'll have to wait and see how that works out for you.
All right, well, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Dylan. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Jean-Gilles, the success of one player can really turn into success for other players as well. And again, it's, you always say, I mean, we're always telling our kids as well, you can do anything you want to. When you have somebody that's actually done it, you can say, well, look, this is an example. I mean, it's one thing you always want to say it, but unless you have an example to actually say, look at what he's done. This is one person. There's more people that are coming out from Northern Ontario as well through this academy, right?
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to, I'm a little over here.
Yep.
There's a couple things, because people, you're always going to get your naysayers, and
Yep.
first purpose they're going to say, well, look, Dylan, he's 6'9", 6'10", no wonder he gets his opportunity. And the thing that I love about baseball does not have a shape or size. You know what I mean? We got guys, you know, Stubby Clapp is a perfect example for a Canadian. You know, you can go through different Blue Jay players, their height, their weight, so on and so forth. Baseball has every shape and size. So for them to say, well, Dylan was 6'10", that was his thing. Dylan played his dues, and there's many, many, many people that throw as hard as him. It's his makeup. It's who he is. And if you talk to a lot of American coaches that, you know, get our players, and they love Canadians, because the first thing they'll say, because they work. Because we do not take it for granted, which and I may get, you know, scorned for this one, but maybe that's what it is for hockey for us. Hockey players take it for granted here because we can just do it.
Yep.
Well, baseball players don't take it for granted, because they know there's thousands that are waiting to take their job like that. Another thing I wanted to tell Dylan, I don't know if he's still listening or watching, I just wanted to commend him for going back to school. I don't know how many people they'll get drafted and they think that's it, I made the dream, that's it. You're in minor league baseball, you still have a lot of work cut out for you. However, for him to go back to school, kudos to him, and I think, again, that's the makeup of the type of kids we send away, basically.
Well, it's plan B. I mean, regardless of what you do, you know, you can have an injury and be the most sought-after player, but you have an injury that can really impact. So you have to have a fallback plan, too.
But how many kids do it, right? They're just tunnel vision. This is where I'm going, and that's the only thing that's going to be there. What if? What if? You got to plan for what if. And if not, you sit back and you have a degree. Congratulations. No one can take that from you.
That's right.
But someone can take your right arm, your left arm, your leg, so on and so forth. But they can't take that degree from you.
All right.
So.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back on Sports Talk Now, we'll be joined by Sportsnet's Gregg Zaun. We'll talk a bit about the Jays, talk a little about development of players in Northern Ontario and Canada, for that matter. So stay tuned, and we'll have those numbers for you when we come back if you want to tune in and give us a call on Sports Talk Now.
Well, it's true that I fart, but I wouldn't call myself a farter. I'm a social farter. I really only do it when I'm out with my friends that fart. We hang out, we drink, we dance. Just have some fun being together. Farting. Sometimes I'll use farting as an excuse to meet a guy. Do you want to go outside for a fart? Yeah. We talk. We fart. Just because I fart at parties now and then, it doesn't make me a farter.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Now across the Northeast, whether you be watching it in Sudbury, Timmins, Temiskaming Shores, Elliott Lake, Kapuskasing, Sturgeon Falls. We welcome you to the program. Again, trying to warm things up a little bit on a cool December evening with baseball talk. And very pleased to have with us Jean-Gilles Larocque from Sudbury Baseball Academy. And we just spoke to a young man who's got a pretty good future, I think, ahead of him, Jean-Gilles, in Dylan Rheault, who was drafted by the Orioles back in 2013. And boy, oh boy, it's great to see that happening here. And I know with the Baseball Academy as well, you're telling me it's going year-round now. So you've got players that are really committed to doing this, and they're ready to go year-round on it. Yeah,
and I'm not a fan. I don't want to pigeonhole kids in playing one sport. We still encourage the kids to play basketball and other sports. We're not saying you just have to do baseball. Some have chosen that. You know, they're in grade 11 or 12. They've chosen that avenue. But yeah, we give that option. You know, some younger players are coming out once a week to do their thing, and then as the season progresses, they're ready to go. But yeah, we're given the opportunity anyways.
Perfect. Yeah. We want to welcome to the program Gregg Zaun from Sportsnet. Gregg, good evening.
How you doing?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing well, just decorating a Christmas tree and enjoying the crisp Canadian weather.
Have you got your lights up yet, or no?
Oh yeah, we got some lights up on the tree, putting the ornaments on, and lights are outside. We got phase 1 of the Griswold house going.
Well, we do appreciate you taking the time. Of course, in studio with us is Jean-Gilles Larocque from the Baseball Academy. Let's talk a little bit about Gregg Zaun and how you got started in your career, and give people a little bit of background about your journey through baseball.
Well, I got lucky and was born into a baseball family. My Uncle Rick played 24 years in the big leagues. Rick Dempsey, former catcher, and his younger brother Pat was a minor league ball player. So it was just one of those things that I grew up watching the uncles and wanted to emulate them, and just fell in love with the game and started off, playing t-ball, and just never really lost that desire, that passion. I knew pretty well by the time I got into Little League what I wanted to do.
Now, we just talked with a young man originally from the area, Dylan Rheault, who's down in the Orioles organization, and he's hoping someday to make it to the bigs as well. And you share something similar in the sense that you were drafted by Baltimore back in '89 as well, and got to play in June of '95. Was it the World Series your biggest thrill in baseball, or what would you say that is?
Yeah, I would say so. There were some nice individual moments, but you play for the ring, and I was in the right place at the right time. I was miserable when I got traded from Baltimore to basically a last place team with a Gold Glove catcher who was 3 months younger than me. I figured I'm going to go from one bad situation to a worse one for playing time, and then it just worked out. The fall of '96 and on into the spring of '97, they basically retooled the entire ball club via trade and free agency, and we were the third best team record-wise in all of baseball, definitely talent-wise the best, and it was a lot of fun. It was a tremendous ride, and it really did open my eyes to a lot of things. Watching all those great professionals go through their daily routines, listening to Jim Leland talk the game, and watching the moves that he made, it really set me up for the rest of my career.
Now, you moved over to Kansas City, Houston, and then in Toronto, of course, a lot of people remember you with the Blue Jays as a catcher with that club. And tell us about your time in Toronto as a player.
Well, it was wild because I had been released the last day of spring training by Montreal. I'd kind of gone from being the highest paid backup in the game to out of a job and scrambling, and ended up going back to the minor leagues for the first time in, say, 8 years, I believe. And the Blue Jays just basically picked me up and gave me a chance to keep sharp until something happened, and it turned out to be with their own ball club. Gregg went down to an ankle injury in a game in Minnesota. I came up, and Kevin Cash, he pulled a hamstring, and I hit 400 the first month I was there. And Carlos Tosca, I knew him from my days with the Marlins, and he liked the way I played the game, and it became one of those situations where if I could walk, I was playing for him because he gave me every opportunity. And I know J.P. Ricciardi, had a lot to do with bringing me in because of the style of play, patient at the plate, and he'll give him a good at bat, and then the defense behind the plate. So I enjoyed the best years of my career while I was playing in Toronto. I certainly had the most success on the field, due to a couple of things. I had finally matured as a player. I was a little bit of a late bloomer. Going from the minor leagues to the big leagues, it took me a little while to figure out what kind of player I was and what kind of player I wasn't. But getting the opportunity certainly helped, and for me, it was third time was a charm. It was a lucky break.
Growing up, of course, you said baseball was your love of the sport, and I know that Dylan Rheault, who we just talked to, as I mentioned, same thing for him. You got a fellow like Jean Gilles, who's here in Sudbury, and he's got this crazy idea of putting together a 12-month-a-year baseball academy in the middle of Northern Ontario, 4 hours north of Toronto. A lot of people probably thought he might have been a little bit challenged or something because, let's face it, I mean, you don't necessarily think baseball, especially this far north, but it's really been working out well. Given that situation, you had a couple of role models in your uncle. You mentioned Rick and those fellows. So you had that as an encouragement. Plus, baseball is king down in America, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, he's in California too.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I lived in California my whole life. It was pretty easy. But having the role models and having the opportunity, I was blessed to have some really great coaching when I was a young kid. Some very passionate adults that were all about the kids and giving them an opportunity to play. I mean, we didn't have any, scouting teams. We didn't play year round. We played every sport. Basketball season we played basketball or soccer. Football season, tackle football was the one, and then when baseball would come around, we did it. But it was one of those things where you could always go down to the ballpark and play over the line, play some catch, and we did. We spent a lot of time playing baseball. A lot of time just polishing skills, playing catch, fielding ground balls, throwing each other batting practice. I was lucky with my uncle having he had a batting cage and he gave it to me. I had a vacant lot behind my house, and we set it up with a bunch of lumber that we stole from the nearby construction sites, and we just go back there and throw each other BP all the time. That was our passion. We had an opportunity weather-wise, and I think that's one of the greatest things about Canada now is they're starting to understand that there's some talented baseball players here. You can't argue with the success of guys like Stairs and Morneau and Walker and so on and so forth. I mean, Joey Votto here in Ontario. It's a hotbed. There's some really polished players up here, and I think one of the reasons why they're so polished is because they spend a great deal of time indoors polishing fundamental skills, and then when it comes time to get outside, those skills really show themselves and translate. And to me, as long as you're doing something baseball-wise, once you get out on the field, it's all elementary after that. But the basics of a good swing, throwing mechanics, etc., those take practice, they take reps, and if you're a kid that lives in northern Ontario, you got to hope to find a place like Jean Gilles has and get in there and get your work in, because it's not a sport that you see too many people just born naturally to play. It takes some take some time and some practice.
With this, of course, we're talking a big part of Canada, of course, is watching the Blue Jays, and you know, the goal of whether playing the NHL or playing Major League Baseball someday to hopefully hook up with the Blue Jays. Tell us a little bit about some of the moves they've made recently. Are you surprised by them? Do you see the plan in place here, Alex Anthopoulos, what he's trying to assemble?
Well, I can definitely tell you that he's trying to assemble some better character in the clubhouse and some guys that are, you know, going to stay on the field and be able to play more games. I kind of knew, you know, the Brett Lawrie thing was coming, or at least that they were open to trading him. Obviously, a tremendously talented young man, still very young, but you know, people feel like he hasn't really produced and become the player that they hoped he would be so far at this point in his career. You know, that being said, they make a trade, they give away a pitcher and Brett Lawrie for a proven, you know, 35 home run hitter in a ballpark that's not conducive to hitting home runs. Not to mention he's a pretty darn good third baseman as well, and in Josh Donaldson. And you know, that to me was an absolutely brilliant move. I think you know, we'll find out, you know, a year or two from now whether or not you know, Brett becomes the player that people expected him to be. But you know, the Jays have to win right now, and you know, it's nice, and you know, it's nice for public relations to have a Canadian kid on the team. You know, they went out and they got Russ Martin, but there's more to it than, you know, the character in the clubhouse with him. There's more to it than the fact that he's Canadian. He's a good player. He's going to produce on the field, and I think the Jays, whether it's with, you know, Latinos, Canadians, Americans, it doesn't really matter where they're coming from, even Japanese players, Asian players. The time is now. They've got Edwin Encarnacion and Jose Bautista, two of the cornerstones of the organization. They've got them through the end of the season. I can see that the Jays are being very aggressive, and I agree with everything that they've done so far because, you know, the American League East is down. It's not, you know, the typical American League East that I played in where, you know, all the teams were typically better than the rest of the league, and all the power was in that division. It's shifted west, and so it's there for the taking if somebody's willing to step up and make bold moves and be aggressive. You've seen Boston do it already. I like what they did. They got a little stronger in the outfield. They needed to, and you know, they've solved one of the problems that they had, which is third base, and you know, they got a catcher who. It's amazing. You look at the offensive numbers, and you know, they're pretty much right there next to one another. Meaning, you know, Navarro and Russ Martin. But you know, some of the new stats that they're able to keep track of, some of the angles that they're able to take, you know, on cameras and computer usage, it tells you a story that only a very veteran baseball eye would be able to tell you. And a lot of the newer GMs and front office personnel, it's all subjective to them. They don't really get it because they didn't spend a whole lot of time on the field. But when you look at statistics like how many pitches out of the strike zone that Russell Martin was able to turn into strikes for his ball club last year, 155, versus how many balls in the strike zone that Navarro turned into balls, 110, that's a gap of 200 pitches. And JG will tell you, one pitch can mean the difference in an at-bat, one AB can mean the difference in a game, and one game can mean the difference in a season. So when you're looking at 200 instances of, you know, being better, and it could mean the ball game or a pennant, holy smokes. I mean, you can't argue with those numbers. I kind of wish they were keeping those stats when I played because I really prided myself on being able to catch the ball properly and do some things with my mitt. And you can't argue with Russell Martin's numbers, and you can't argue with the character. And if he's 75% of the guy that he's advertised to be in the clubhouse, the Jays are going to be a lot better off than they were the last few years.
I had talked to the catching coach at one of the games this summer. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and that's an exact statistic he was talking about. And he was talking about during the summer how weekly they'll go through the video and see how many pitches they turn from balls to strikes and strikes to the balls. And he had a ratio they wanted to stay within, so I'm glad you kind of brought that up. The other part I wanted to ask you about, you're part of a World Series team. You're seeing what the Jays are doing now. What makes a World Series team?
Well, you have to have good pitching, you have to have good defense, and you're going to have timely hitting. That's the formula for any type of ball club. But the other thing that you have to have is you have to have guys that are willing to row the boat in the same direction. You know, Jim Leland used to kid when guys would ask him what their role was. He would say, "Well, you know, a roll is something that you put butter on." But he was joking, of course. Everybody has their skill set. Everybody has a role to play on a baseball team. Some guys are not willing to play that role. Some guys don't see themselves in the role that everybody else does. It's special when you combine a talented group of players who row the boat in the same direction, who all are willing to accept their roles, who are all willing to do the best that they can to check their egos at the door each day and go out there and play team-oriented baseball. And that means you know, not trying to protect your ERA, having team at bats. You know, sometimes you go out there and you know you don't want to throw a guy a 2-0 fastball, but it's the right thing to do because you're either up 7 or down 7. You know, you don't want to leave your team standing out there. You don't want to throw more pitches than you need to. There's just a way, and guys will show themselves to you over the course of 162 games. They'll tell you exactly what their priorities are and what their main motivation for being a big league ball player is. And when you're a part of a winner, it's check the egos and play the game the right way for your teammates. And it all came together for us in '97 when we traded for Darren Dalton and Craig Counsell. We needed a guy who could make the routine play at second base. Luis Castillo was not quite ready. Super talented kid, but he just wasn't ready. And Craig could just make all the routine plays. And then, you know, the emotional leader, the guy that became the glue, the hub, and that kind of rallied everybody to checking their egos was Darren Dalton. It was unbelievable. First day in the uniform, I remember we were in Cincinnati in the tunnel, and we had gotten our heads kicked in by Cincinnati all year, and we had gotten our heads kicked in again by them, and they were a last-place team. And he basically, and I'm going to paraphrase because I'm sure there's children listening, but he basically said, you know what, we really enjoyed playing you guys when I was with Philly because, you know, we knew you guys were soft, and we knew we could find a way to beat you eventually if we just lasted long enough. And it was at that point that everybody, the Sheffields, the Bobby Bonilla's, Jeff Conine, Mr. Marlin, everybody started checking their ego at the door. Guys just started playing the game the right way, and we were, you know, we were right there in the thick of it because of talent. We're underachieving all year, but it was that moment. I will never forget it as long as I live, when you felt a team rally around one guy and one idea, and it became very evident after that we were headed for something special.
We're watching Sports Talk now. Gary Beech along with Jean-Gilles Larocque, Sudbury Baseball Academy. We've got Gregg Zaun on the phone and Peter from Sudbury. Peter, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
You've got a question?
Yes, I do. And Gary and Eastlink, great idea to have this talk show on. We appreciate that. Gregg, I actually have 2 questions for you. The first one's from my wife. What do you spend and where do you get the wardrobe you have on television every night?
Gregg, did you catch that question?
No, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing the question.
Okay.
You have to relay it to me.
All right, it's Peter from Sudbury. The question's from his wife, and she wants to know, what do you spend and where do you get the wardrobe that you have on Sportsnet?
Well, I don't spend anything. I have an actual clothing contract, which is kind of cool. It's by a company called Garrison Bespoke. They are the finest bespoke suit maker in the city of Toronto, probably in the entire country. They're very, very special. You should check out their website. They actually sell a bulletproof suit for executives and the like. So just the creme de la creme of the fabrics. The suiting is unbelievable, and the workmanship is everything. And a lot of people like to ask me about the clothing, but between them and my stylist, Deb Berman, they keep me looking pretty sharp.
Peter, what's your second question?
Well, let's talk baseball. I guess, Gary, would be my question. Gregg, do you think a new stadium is needed for the Jays in Toronto? And by that I mean the Rogers Centre is a little bit tired, but more importantly, maybe there's an advantage with our northern climate to playing some games in the early spring and late fall that may help us. I'd like to know your thoughts on that, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
All right, thank you,
Yeah,
Peter.
I caught that one.
You caught that? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I caught that one. I'll answer the second part first. No, I don't think there's going to be an advantage because most of your players are from warmer climates. They're not going to be enthusiastic about playing outdoors in April and even in early May in Toronto. I mean, it's hit and miss what kind of weather you're going to get. I don't think the Rogers Center is old or dilapidated at all. And you know, to me, it's still a marvel. I still remember going to play there and enjoying myself immensely. And you know, they make a lot out of the AstroTurf, especially now. Players are, in my opinion, they're wound way too tight. It's not the AstroTurf that's causing the injuries. It's all the energy drinks. It's all of the fascination with having six-pack abs. You have to have a certain amount of body fat to play a game 162 times in 180 days. It's very difficult. JG will tell you, over the course of a summer, when the heat gets there, your appetite disappears. It's tough to eat. It's tough to hydrate every single day. The AstroTurf, the old stuff, yes, I would imagine it had some effect on guys' legs, their lower backs. But the fact that I think the guys, they're just not in as good a shape cardiovascularly as they used to be. Nobody runs anymore. Consequently, the body doesn't take the necessary pounding that it needs to take. I mean, you watch guys that are supposed to make their living with their legs. As soon as they try to stretch a double into a triple, they pull hamstrings. You have to practice running in order to run fast. You have to practice running distance in order to run distance. And the baseball season, while you know it's short bursts of energy all year long, you know, it's a marathon. And you gotta have a little bit of a utility belt there. These guys they're just absolutely wound too tight. They're counting every calorie. You look at them and they're like fitness models, but none of them, you know, they can't last. They run around the bases. They pull hamstrings. The new thing is the obliques. I'm gonna tell people you can't pull fat. You can't pull it. You know, I'm not saying go to the gym training with a spare tire, but you still have to have some common sense about you and understand that, you know, you're not a fitness model. You're a baseball player. You want to be fit to play baseball. Well, baseball is a long grind, and you better bring your utility belt with you if you're going to play.
Well, based upon that, Greg,
can't eat acorns and barley all year, and it's not going to stay with you.
Well, based upon that synopsis, I think I'd probably be able to play about 300 games a year based upon anyway, but that's another story altogether. We've got to take one more quick call if we can. We've got Ben from Lively. Ben, go ahead.
Why do you think Canada has a problem with producing middle infielders?
Greg, Ben wants to know why Canada has a problem producing middle infielders.
Well, that's a great question. You know, without any kind of, you know, statistics in front of me, you look at the infield situation throughout Major League Baseball, and it tends to be heavy on the Latin side. It's a very popular position to play because a lot of the great Latins in the history of the game were middle infielders. You look at the great Canadians that have played, you know, what position have they played? They've been outfielders, they've been corner infielders, they've been pitchers. I think it'll take one great Canadian middle infielder to break through. Certainly not for lack of coaching, I can tell you that. I just think that, you know, kids grow up emulating their heroes, and you know, I became a catcher because my uncles were catchers. People wanted me to play middle infield my whole life, but I said no because that wasn't what my uncles did. I just think you get one middle infielder to break through from Canada, and I think that you'll see a lot more guys interested in playing that position. But therein lies the kind of the double-edged sword. You're going to need a kid from a place where he can get reps, because all the greatest infielders, those guys have taken thousands, if not millions, of ground balls in their life, and goodness gracious, it takes a lot of work to be good at that. You're constantly fielding ground balls, constantly fine-tuning your mechanics, your footwork. That takes a lot of practice. Not to put down being an outfielder, but it doesn't take quite as much repetition to shag flies in the outfield and swing a bat as it does to, field ground balls on your wrong foot and, make off-balance throws all over the diamond. It takes a lot of repetition.
Gregg, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And Ben, thank you so much for the call as well. We're going to take a quick break. We'll let Gregg head back to the Christmas lights outside. There's a couple that fell down while we were talking. And we'll have your cohort in crime with Sportsnet, Jamie Campbell, up in just a moment. You're watching Sports Talk Now live right here on Eastlink.
If you have an HD TV but aren't watching in HD, you're not getting the whole picture. Your favorite show may be zoomed in, making it fuzzy, or stretched out, distorting the picture. With an HD TV, you could be watching a crisper, more vibrant picture. And with Eastlink, you have access to over 165 HD channels with more to come. It's easy to get started. Just give us a call, and in no time, you'll be enjoying all of your favorite shows in brilliant HD. Eastlink. Experience beyond.
We're getting killed on the boards. This is your territory, Grimson. Do your job.
Grimson. Hello? Oh, hi, honey. Al? All right. The itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water. Down came the rain.
I love you, Daddy.
I love you too, sweetheart.
Love. Pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Welcome back to Sports Talk Now. It's Gary Beech along with Jean-Gilles Larocque. We're talking baseball tonight. We've had the pleasure of talking with Dylan Rheault, an up-and-comer. Write that name down somewhere. You're going to see him in the majors one time. Just talked with Sportsnet's Gregg Zaun. We go to another Sportsnet personality, and Jamie Campbell. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Gary.
We are talking baseball in the middle of, let's see, it's going to be minus 17 Celsius, no wind chill. Probably about minus 35 with the wind chill tonight. So we needed something, a warmer topic to keep us warm here in the Northeast. And one of the things that our guest in studio, Jean-Gilles Larocque, he's played a ton of baseball, inter-county, down in the States, done a lot of coaching as well. And he started this baseball academy 2006. So he's helping to get young men from the North into Major League Baseball. And it's something that's worked really well, really well, and hopefully we'll see more and more Canadian players. Let's talk a little bit about yourself. Now, you're down from Southern Ontario, and over the past number of years, you've seen more and more Canadian players coming into the major leagues. What are your thoughts on Canadian players that you've run into?
Well, it's remarkable how the game has improved in terms of the talent coming out of this country in even the last 20 years. As a young man growing up about 40 kilometers from Toronto, I went to a lot of games at the old exhibition stadium, and at the time could probably count the number of Canadians in the big leagues on one hand. Fergie Jenkins was around at that time. Terry Poole was playing in the outfield for the Houston Astros, and then you had guys like Reggie Cleveland and Cup of Coffee guys like Gordy Platson and Dave McKay, who was the starting third baseman for the Blue Jays in 1977. And now consider the talent level, whether it's Justin Morneau, who was just named recipient of the Tip O'Neill Award, or Joey Votto, who is among the game's best players right now. young players as well, whether it's Brett Laurie now of the A's or Dalton Pompey. I think a lot of it has to do with the success of first the Expos and then the Blue Jays, and the fact that young Canadians saw those teams on television, saw their successes, and realized it's not a pipe dream to want to be Canadian and play in the major leagues. I also think the success of those two professional franchises have spawned places like the Baseball Academy or Centerfield Sports in London, or the countless number of facilities that I've been to in Western Canada and parts of Eastern Canada, where it's possible now, if you're a baseball player, to play the game year-round. You can work out and train and throw and hit indoors during the winter, and then get outside and play the game in the summer as it's designed. And I think facilities like the one that you guys have and that John Gill is operating are paramount to continuing to develop good Canadian ball players.
Jamie Campbell from Sportsnet live on the phone with us, and we've got a call from Jack. Jack, you've got a question?
Yes, Gary, Jamie, just was wondering if we could take a quick run through the Blue Jays' potential lineup for 2015. Certainly at catcher with Martin, that seems to be a lock, as well as third base with Donaldson, Reyes at shortstop. Who might we project to be playing second base next season?
Well, second base at this very moment appears to be quite possibly a three-headed monster. It'll be one of either Ryan Goins or Meiser Asturis, or quite possibly the young man that was acquired in the trade with the Detroit Tigers that sent Anthony Ghost there. And I speak of a kid by the name of Devin Travis, who was the number one prospect for the Tigers before he was dealt. So second base is clearly a position that the Blue Jays need to upgrade. The outfield now appears to be set with the acquisition about an hour ago of Michael Saunders from Seattle in exchange for Jay Happ. So you probably see Saunders in left, a combination of Pompey and Kevin Pillar in center, and of course Jose Bautista in right field. Obviously they have some work to do. Second base is a concern. There has to be an upgrade in the bullpen. There are some who are saying that perhaps Aaron Sanchez will now stretch out and try to be a member of the rotation, try and win a spot in the rotation. In fact, Alex Anthopoulos said that about 15 minutes ago on a conference call. I tend to think that the way, for example, the Kansas City Royals performed this year, maybe it's best to have one of your best arms in the bullpen remain in the bullpen. And I wouldn't mind seeing Aaron Sanchez stay in the bullpen for one more year before they consider turning him into a starter. But as you mentioned, Russ Martin behind the plate. Third base belongs to Josh Donaldson. This is a team that has changed dramatically in the last month, and there are many people, and I'm one of those, who feel it's been dramatically improved.
What about DH?
He's asking about DH, Jamie.
Oh, well, the designated hitter spot is going to be an interesting one. For now, it's probably Dioner Navarro's job on a full-time basis, but Alex Anthopoulos has promised to try and move Dioner Navarro, and rightly so. He wants to catch every day. He's not going to be doing it in Toronto now that Russ Martin is with the club, and he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So Alex needs to do right by him, unless Dioner Navarro comes around and says, you know what, I don't mind being an everyday DH. They did sign Justin Smoke, who's a very powerful right-handed bat, to a contract today for 1 year and $1 million. So he's a guy who some feel just wasn't able to show his potential in Seattle in a bigger ballpark, and maybe coming to the Rogers Center will help him. So DH at this point is probably a combination at this very minute of Smoke and Navarro, but boy, so much can change between now and opening day.
And what about Pompey? Is he potential for center field?
I think at this point they are tabbing Dalton as the starting center fielder. He's a good kid. He lives and breathes the game. He doesn't seem distracted by having reached the big leagues so quickly. There is some risk, obviously, in running a raw rookie out into center field. But at this moment, with Bautista in right field, Saunders in left, at least he's surrounded by veteran players. Saunders has been in the big leagues 5 years, Bautista since 2004. So maybe it's not a giant risk. And he really proved in September last year that he is ready to make the next step. Whether or not he needs another season in AAA, I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable with the idea of him as the starting center fielder this year, but there are some who might think he needs a little more seasoning in the minors.
Jack, thank you so much for your calls. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Gary.
Jamie, when you take a look, you're mentioning the J Happ move with Saunders. The starting lineup, is it going to be a strong enough lineup this year, or is Alex still going to have to do some dickering on that mark as well?
Well, he's got lots to do, obviously, but I mean, you think about it from a hitter's perspective, from a production standpoint. They've got one of the best, most formidable lineups in the game. You know, the veteran Jose Reyes leading off, and yes, he's getting on in years, but he is still a very dynamic presence. You'll probably see Russ Martin hitting second, and then you've got the combination of Bautista, Encarnacion, and Donaldson, followed by quite possibly Navarro or Smoke. I would suggest you'll probably see Michael Saunders hitting, down in the order 7th or 8th. It's just and then you can run the rookie up there and bat him 9th. It's just a very solid lineup, very solid and very productive on paper, obviously. I'm really impressed with the makeover, really impressed, and I thought it was going to be very difficult to make this team different than it was a year ago, but Alex somehow has that magic touch. He was able to get one of the best third basemen in the game away from the Oakland A's in exchange for Brett Lawrie and really 3 prospects, only one of whom may ever amount to anything in the major leagues. And he was able to throw enough money at Russ Martin and convince him to come and help develop this young pitching staff. So on the field and certainly in the clubhouse, this team has made incredible improvements.
Well, we've got about a minute left, and I think that we were talking with Gregg earlier as well, and one of the things that he mentioned quickly was that, you know what, you can have all the talent in the world, but if they don't have that chemistry, and chemistry is something that, you know what, you've got to mix everything together and hope that it comes out the way you want it. Did they do that, do you think, by bringing in Martin and a player like that who can be a take-charge type of fella and get everybody to drop their egos at the door and play the game?
Absolutely. I think most people figured that responsibility the last few years has belonged lock, stock, and barrel to Jose Bautista, and that may be true. But it never hurts to have someone with the reputation of Russ Martin looking around the clubhouse and saying, hey, this is how we do things now. Because here's a guy who, in his entire major league career, has only missed the postseason twice. And then bringing in a guy that has emerged as one of the best young players in the game in Donaldson, and adding a presence like Saunders. There are a lot of people now who are going to start paying attention to what some of those veteran players are saying in the clubhouse, and that's great because the general thought was near the end of the year that there were a lot of players who were basically out to play for themselves, and that doesn't always necessarily create a winning atmosphere, as the Blue Jays proved a year ago.
Jamie Campbell from Sportsnet, thank you again for taking time tonight to talk to us. We appreciate your input on the Blue Jays, and best of luck calling their games this year. Jean-J Larocque, again, it's been a pleasure meeting you, having you come by, and hopefully we can do this again. And hopefully you at home got a little bit of that warm feeling tonight with the baseball season only, let me see, a few months away, maybe a little bit longer, but enjoy it as you will. We'll be back again next week. 1 week from now, we'll be talking about basketball in Canada. Of course, we talk basketball in Canada, you talk the Raptors as well. We'll be talking with one of the writers from the Toronto Raptors and Sportsnet as well, Gregg. That'll be coming up in 1 week's time. Until then, thanks for watching.